Christmas time is coming fast, which means it's the perfect time to get into Warhammer and start buying overpriced plastic army men. But which set of plastic army men? Checking them out on a wiki doesn't help if you just want a quick overview. You'll open up a page and get smacked in the face with terms like Primarch and Lumineth, and that's before you hit the price points of the hobby.
Oh Jesus, look at that.
So what I want to do here is see not which army to pick, but which system to pick. Warhammer 40k or Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I'm going to cover some basic lore and model appearances and differences more than anything. I spent an ungodly amount of time going through lore, but I picked the worst year to start playing, with every Games Workshop store not hosting games anymore for safety reasons. I'll go over what I think are the strong points and weak points of each of the games, what their lore is going for, the general feel of the setting, that kind of thing. To start, I think I'll jump into the setting most people new to the hobby think of, Warhammer 40,000.
For in this new dark age, there is only war.
So fucking cool.
As the intro blurb for just about everything related to it says, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. If nothing else, that's what you should keep in mind about the 40k setting. It is incredibly dark. All Warhammer content is to some extent, but 40k is the darkest dark to ever dark. The ships used by the main human factions are crewed by slaves that manually load each cell into the cannons and live forever in their dark, squalid quarters. Planets are destroyed all the time because of a variety of reasons, again including by the human faction nominally trying to protect them. There are no good guys here. Best you can say is that there are protagonists whose ends might justify the means. Even in more recent years, as they toned down the grimdark to appeal to changing tastes, it's still a brutal and horrific setting. Place even the nicest faction in, say, Star Trek, and anyone there would be appalled by them. Another thing this setting has going for it is that it's basically a fantasy world cosplaying as science fiction, like Star Wars but even more blatant. Not only because the sci-fi is so soft, but because of how everyone acts and looks in the setting. The face of the setting are the Space Marines, and they're warrior monks in space wearing enough armor to build a smart car out of, kinda like Jedi if they all hated non-human beings with a burning passion. Almost everyone has dedicated melee units to charge in with sword and shield in hand like a medieval knight, running face first into machine gun nests and actually coming out on top with plenty of totally valid in-universe explanations serving the ultimate one, which is, it's fucking cool. Even the most advanced technology can only be activated by a mechanical priest reverently praying to it. And there's magic too. They say it's psychic powers, but if you look around at a few pictures you'll find that Games Workshop is pretty liberal with the term psychic. Look at these space elves psychically electrocuting those space bugs. It's not magic, shut up. Oh, and speaking of, there's more than a few standard fantasy races called different names. Eldar are just elves with the usual high, dark, and wood arrangements. Orcs are just orcs but spelled with a K. You get the picture. Of course, fantasy pretending to be sci-fi still means there's sci-fi elements abound. There's FTL systems where ships literally travel through hell, or Portal Network if you're so inclined. There's a ravenous horde of space bugs that want nothing but to eat everyone. Space Terminator Egyptians want to subjugate and/or destroy all organic life, and planet-destroying superweapons that would make the Death Star blush are everywhere. The scale of the setting is literally galactic, and it feels that way. Planets get obliterated almost daily, and unless it's a plot-important planet for whatever reason, it has little to no major impact on the Imperium, or whoever else happens to own it. The Imperium itself is said to own 1 million worlds, probably many more uncounted ones that have been left out due to bureaucratic inefficiency. The Imperium is so big that entire planets just get lost in the paperwork because Bob from accounting screwed up his long division. The elves live in either space-sized ships the size of planets, called craft worlds appropriately enough, or a solar system-sized slum depending on which variety of them you look at. Orcs are just everywhere. If you want a setting with plenty of room for your home games to take place in, you can do no wrong here. Much of the history of the universe is additionally left vague, if not outright said to be lost, so if you want to create, say, a custom chapter of Space Marines from one of those lost worlds, or a colony of orcs living side by side with the humans for whatever reason, you can absolutely do that. It's part of the fun, I think, letting your creative mind run wild in a setting so open-ended and vast. Even if you choose from some of the pre-made factions, there's over 10,000 years of history to set them in. Go wild with your imagination. Make your homebrew, peace-loving sub-faction of the Imperial Guard that spares all their enemies and just kicks so much ass, or go back to tradition and have your space Satan-worshipping super soldiers who use the souls of their sex slaves to summon demons into the universe to help them gather more sex slaves. It would probably be a good thing to talk about appearances and models for the tabletop model game. They're great. The aforementioned smart car super soldiers, hordes of alien bugs or orcs, elite squads of space elves. None of the major factions really stick out as not belonging, and each major faction group have their own feel to them, even going beyond whatever trope you can ultimately stick them in. The Imperium may use power armor like every other sci-fi universe now and have Starship Trooper red shirts, but they also have a Catholic Christianity theme that is all the more impressive for not looking out of place in a sci-fi universe. Look at the Sisters of Battle. They're just nuns with guns, but they're kick-ass for it. This spaceship is just a flying cathedral. The Eldar may ultimately just be high elves, but their lore and aesthetics go beyond ripping off Lord of the Rings into something uniquely their own, from their ghost robots to their wizards. The orcs are just a blast, a group of idiots so stupid they can will their beliefs into reality through the power of their stupidity, and they don't even know they're doing it. Wielding scrap weapons tough enough to cut through the strongest armor around because they believe it can, and so it does. Even the literal demons don't feel out of place, probably because everyone else already looks like a space knight, so it just feels right, I guess. Of course, it's not perfect. Going back to those Space Marines, while each chapter does have an incredibly unique history differentiating them from each other, from a model perspective, you're not getting away from dudes in power armor. The difference between a Blood Raven and an Ultramarine once you strip the lore away is that one is red and the other is blue. There are some differences. The Space Wolves in particular stick out with their mutated semi-marines, and the Ultramarine models do have something of a Greco-Roman theme going for them, but for the most part, the models are going to be different colors and that's about it. Same for a few other factions. The Necrons are all robots with the foot soldiers having no personality at all, ultimately looking the same. The leaders may have fancier clothes and armor, but are still the same template of robot. This isn't the case for every army, and of course the models do usually look good either way, but as a rule of thumb, if you go with a faction, you're only getting so much variety. Also, every now and then, a silly model will slip in. Chaos has this thing. It got so much backlash that eventually they released a conversion kit for it to make it into something that didn't look like that. But while it may be gone, know that the designers at Games Workshop are always there, lurking, and sometimes they're going to make an atrocity that even Tzeentch couldn't imagine creating. The lore has more than a few issues as well. Like I said before, it is dark as hell. If you want heroes that are unambiguously heroes, you're going to be hard-pressed to find them, and chances are they won't have nearly as big an effect on the lore as the gray or black morality characters do. The Imperium fights to save humanity, but also ruthlessly exterminates aliens and everyone who doesn't support their mandated religion. The Eldar will do entire systems of planets just to save a few of their own. In recent years, things have toned down and more justifications have been given for the worst actions, but at the end of the day, everyone is an asshole and will commit what in other settings would be unthinkable atrocities with little, if any, hesitation. This is an inherently bad thing, but just keep in mind if you're looking for a setting with good and bad guys, because you won't find any of the first one in here. The lore is also fit to change at the whim of the writers and developers of the game. The Emperor of Mankind used to be a well-intentioned extremist who loved his sons even as they rebelled against him. The past few years have turned him into a morally detached psychopath who viewed everyone around him as pawns for his ultimate goals, even if in the end he did want the best for humanity. Necrons used to all be unfeeling robots who just wanted to kill all life, Terminator style. Now they have different dynasties and factional conflicts. While major changes like that are relatively rare, smaller bits of lore can and will change between updates to the game. One last point before we jump ship from 40k for a bit is that their models don't fit into many settings besides 40k. There are a vast amount of uses for them, don't get me wrong, from major tabletop battles like Apocalypse to skirmish games like Kill Team to even smaller games like Dark Heresy. But a Space Marine or Necron might not fit in very well in a D&D campaign, for instance. Sci-fi overrides the fantasy here. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the setting that's gotten more hate than the Star Wars sequels, Warhammer Age of Sigmar. While 40k is fantasy pretending to be sci-fi, AoS is the highest fantasy setting you can get, with a few surprising bits of sci-fi peeking through. The universe is separated into realms based on a kind of magic, death, fire, life, shadow, those kinds of lovely places. Griffins and wizards are all over the place and are backed up by Renaissance-era pike and shot infantry, and even steam-powered tanks. Fucking awesome! Elves are here with their typical snooty attitudes and technically being right, but you hate them for it because, dear God, are they just the worst? The sci-fi stuff, however, is fitting and still ultimately runs off magic. Traveling between the realms on a large scale requires what's called realm gates, kind of like the Mass Effect relays. While the realms are technically finite in size, functionally you've got an unlimited space to work with, kind of like a galaxy. The dwarfs, or Duarden if you're a Games Workshop copyright lawyer, use gunships and advanced artillery to make up for lacking magic. And the race of evil ratmen use Hellrocks to fuel the World War I weaponry and to augment their biological monsters. Such a pleasant race the Skaven are. Age of Sigmar is also significantly less dark than 40k, even if it is still darker than most other fantasy settings. Both of them have the main antagonist being Chaos, demons and their followers serving 4 or 5 dark gods of the universe. In 40k, once you're corrupted, that's it for you. Your soul is the property of Chaos now, hope you got what you wanted for it. Demons are also essentially impossible to kill. You can banish them, sure, but they'll come back, and there's only one way to consistently kill them permanently, and it's just some guy's magic sword, not exactly something you can pass around the galaxy. But in AoS, even though the forces of good are on the backpedal a lot of the time, it's a far more balanced fight. The god the setting gets its name from, Sigmar, has armies of fantasy space marines called Stormcast Eternals that kick ass like no one's business. His weapon can even purify champions of chaos provided they have a little bit of good left in them, and permanently killing demons is a lot easier. Races are also on far friendlier terms with each other here. In 40k, they'll work together in the direst of straits, and even then they'll probably be shooting each other again next week. Meanwhile, in AoS, humans and dwarves fight side by side all the time, lizardmen come down from the heavens to help the Stormcast Eternals, and even the undead can be found assisting the living if the situation is right. There's still plenty of conflict, but far more cooperation to balance it out. There may be rampaging hordes of orcs and goblins, cruel undead lich gods, and demons of slaughter and rape, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel for the inhabitants of the mortal realms, however dim it may be. As for the models, similar to 40k, they're almost all fantastic. Once again, each faction has an incredibly diverse look and feel to it. There are some instances of the armies just being dudes in armor here too, the Stormcast Eternals especially, and the Caradhran Overlords too, but beyond them the models are almost as diverse inside a faction as they are between differing ones. The cities of Sigmar are the champions of this. They're partially cheating at it, since they use a lot of the old Warhammer fantasy miniatures from different races, but still impressive for how you can feel armored dwarves, fleet elven archers, and humans riding griffins in the same force. Demons are back and just as varied as they are in 40k. The Skaven may all be ratmen, but they're incredibly varied ratmen. You've got rats wearing metal armor, rats in disgusting plagued robes, ninja rats, mutated super rats, and who could forget this thing? Don't you just want to give it a hug? As a bonus, unlike 40k, these models can be used much more smoothly in non-Warhammer games. The Sylphanath are just ensign tree people, if highly unique ones. Stormcast Eternals can easily be either angels or high-level paladins. The Lizardmen are self-explanatory for what they can be used as. The Orcs and Goblins may be called something different, again because of copyright, but at the end of the day, they're still Orcs and Goblins. Of course, this setting too has its problems. The issues with the models here are mostly of age. A lot of them are still metal cast instead of plastic, which makes painting and assembling them a bit trickier, even though it is cool to slam down a metal rat cyborg onto the table, and the older ones may feel slightly out of place side by side with the newer releases. The lore can be changed around similarly to 40k as well, but between it being a highly magical setting and being much newer as a setting, it isn't as noticeable and obnoxious when 40k does it, in my opinion at least. Unique to Age of Sigmar is how much hatred it's gathered. Long story short, the original fantasy setting got blown up and replaced with this one. Goodbye just about every beloved character and faction. The full story deserves its own video, but take my word for it that Age of Sigmar started from a very rough beginning. So which setting should you pick from if you aren't willing to sell your organs to afford armies in both? Well, there's the obvious one. If you want sci-fi and everything that goes with it, from power armor to giant walkers fighting it out, then go with 40k. If you prefer dragons and undead and wizards not dancing around the fact that they're wizards, go with Age of Sigmar. But beyond that, pick 40k if you want a setting with essentially unlimited narrative freedom for your games, and a setting where even the best of heroes will exterminate a planet if they have to. With tens of thousands of years of history to mess around with, you can set yourself in an age of space combat that spans the width of our own actual history before even reaching the modern day of the setting, and the Space Marines, Eldar, Orcs, and more will be with you every step of the way. The good in the galaxy may be doomed to fall, but it'll fight until the very last bloody battle. Wage a crusade in the name of the God Emperor of mankind, consume countless worlds to sate your never-ending hunger, or just get a good bar brawl going across the entire galaxy. If you want a setting where hope is on the distant horizon and an ever so slightly more structured approach to things, then Age of Sigmar is just for you. With a few hundreds of years of history to work with for your games, you still have plenty of space and time to set them in, with a bit more frameworking to go with it. The good guys may commit horrible deeds, but with more reverence and hesitance to do so. Fight to reclaim the lands from chaos, march the undead forward to usher in an age of never-ending night and stagnation, or just get a good bar brawl going across the mortal realms. If you're still here, then thanks for watching. I honestly enjoyed making this, and I hope I kind of helped you decide which of these games to go with if you want to get into one or the other, or if you've got into one but we're considering the other. I think I'll make some more videos like this one over the next month or so. Maybe go over individual factions or cover the shit show that was the End Times and Warhammer Fantasy's grave. If you want to see that, then subscribe, and either way, happy holidays and take care out there, everyone.